we did see that the FBI has released some documents today detailing some of the investigations into Hillary Clinton's emails. And I was telling Michael before we started the show, the most interesting thing that I was able to find from it was that she doesn't remember some of the briefings that she had because of the concussion, which could either be true, or it could be a way to cover for not wanting to say that you remember it, or it could be because she has an addled brain and terrible health, and we can't allow her to become president.
How dare you?
I don't think she could lift a pickle jar.
I'm literally
it's one of those three things.
I'm literally disgusted by you even saying that. I'm glad she kills people.
Wait, what?
Whatever.
So look, I looked over it, and I mean, there's stuff about some of the gaps in the reporting on the emails. There's some gaps in, like some quotes about her saying that she never admitted that she had things that should have been classified that weren't, which is obviously not true, as we know. But honestly, looking over the document, I didn't see a ton that we haven't already seen, that we didn't already know, aside from the lack of some spots in her memory from the concussions.
Yeah.
Okay. So. I think there was one thing. Oh, so we're going to talk about the leak?
No, if you want to, sure.
Because I just want to bring it up. What I saw was the there was email from May 16th from DNC staffers warning Hillary Clinton not to do what she's doing right now.
What is she doing right now?
What she's doing right now, John, good question, is she gave a speech where she talked about how Donald Trump is horrible, but regular Republicans she respects. Right? She said that. She said, well, we need people like George W. Bush again and Ronald Reagan, and she said someone else. Do we need people like that?
Well, so I think she means as representatives of the Republican Party, not as president.
Okay. She said she was thrilled to have the respect. She also, so what that done, what she was warned to not do by her own DNC, she was warned not to do that because then that screws up the rest of the down ballot tickets. And that was one of the big
You're saying it makes it easier for some of the Republicans running for Senate to win, for instance, maybe?
So what it does is now, instead of pinning the Republican Party with this Frankenstein they created, she's giving them cover to distance themselves from them. So now people who are running down ballot, like in Senate or the Congress, they go, hey, Paul Ryan's horrible. They go, no, Hillary Clinton says he's a good guy and that we should need more of him.
Did she list him as one of them?
So she's getting...
She's more historical than she is contemporary.
Paul Ryan's
right?
She was warned not. That's the email I thought was really interesting. She was warned not to do this by her own staff. She's doing it anyway, and it's because she doesn't care about the. She doesn't care if there's a Republican.
Wait a second.
Wait, let me just finish. She doesn't care if there's a Republican Congress because it gives her cover to pass her neoliberal agenda. This is true.
Well, she
this
definitely would prefer a Democratic Congress.
I don't think
There's no
so.
debate.
Well, of course she would.
I don't think so.
Of course she would. And just because they're giving her advice doesn't necessarily mean she has to take that advice. And it could be sound advice. I see their side more than I see her side in this.
Of course you do. Because you're smart.
But I
obvious.
happen to think she's very smart. And I happen to say, and I think there's an argument that can be made for her side too, which is that nobody really, the people that are going to be voting in this election aren't going to parse all of this in the way that we are doing right now, or that these emails do, or the people that comb through these emails do. And the people that sit at the DNC and try and dissect, well, wait a second, how should we, I don't think the secretary should do this if she's running for president. Let's tell her that that's what we've decided. And then she says, no, you know what, I know what the calculus is to beat Donald Trump, and I think by my doing really, really well in this election, and by our numbers being so overwhelming over Donald Trump in certain states, we are going to get some seats that we would not have otherwise gotten. I think both sides could be argued there. I happen to think the DNC side is a better side. I have no problem with her disagreeing with
I have a huge problem with her disagreeing, and it shows that she puts herself first, not only before the country, but before
the
the
buck
party.
stops here. That's what a president does. I mean, that's what the buck stops here. You know, you could have all the advisors in the room. You listen to everybody, and then you make the decision. That's the definition of how Harry Truman defined the presidency.
I hear your argument. I get it.
It's not defense of Clinton or anything. I'm just saying that there's.
I say what she's doing is actually more nefarious than just trying to win an election. I don't think she cares about the town. I
don't think you know enough to say that she cares or doesn't care, but I do think that my hunch would be that anybody running for the presidency who knows what the job entails, who has been married to a president and served in administration, knows that it's kind of better to have the Congress with you.
Yeah, well, it depends on what you want to get done. And this is if she has a Republican Congress, it gives her cover to do all her neoliberal bullshit. And that's what she wants. And that's what she's going to get.
The Republican Congress
and believe me,
already, without her even being president, they despise her like they despise almost someone else on the planet. And we saw, like, Obama favors a lot of those same sorts of neoliberal policies, we would say. It hasn't been good for him that there was a Republican Congress. Even TPP might not be able to be voted on because as much as they probably agree with a number of different portions of it, they hate him so much that they won't even consider it under him.
The TPP.
Yeah. He was pushing for it up until like the last week or two. And then Mitch, like, I still believe that there's a good chance that it'll go forward. But Mitch McConnell's like, no, we're not doing that.
Really?
As if Mitch McConnell, I don't think, disagrees with it on policy.
So you're saying
grounds.
Republicans are a nice buffer between conservative policy and actually getting it implemented? They're the ones saving us from conservative ideas?
I think that
the Republicans are.
I would say their obstructionism sometimes results in something good, but generally stops us from having any progress on almost any issue you can imagine.
Okay, that's what I thought.
But I would say, look, in terms of the debate that you're saying, and I didn't read that email, I would go more on the side of the DNC staffers and say I would try to tie as many Republicans as Donald Trump and set them all on fire. But I also understand that the weird thing about Donald Trump is there's a lot of crazy Republicans who just support him. There's also Republicans who we would consider crazy who are too embarrassed to support him. And if you remind them over and over that this guy is an embarrassment compared to reasonable Republicans, of which I'm blanking on, but I'm sure you can come up with some from decades ago, that then they won't support him. And if she thinks that the race is likely to be close, which considering how unpopular she is, it probably will be, taking a couple percentage points of Republicans away from him by making them too embarrassed to go out and vote for him isn't a bad strategy.
Yeah, I disagree.
I don't know.
I 100% disagree.
No, I'm not saying that's not how I would go, but I'm saying I think that's what she's
There's an
thinking.
argument to be made, and your point is right, Jimmy. I mean,
Thank you.
you know.
Let's go to the next story.
Don't undercut it at all.
I'm not talking about anything you said on the air. Something you were saying earlier. But I think that we, because that's kind of what we do and how we live and what motivates us and probably our audience to know as much about this stuff as we can and form opinions, we overestimate the effect that has on the voter. If Hillary Clinton's able to sway some Republicans into thinking that she might be the right person to vote for in this election, so that job one for her is to win the presidency, so that she wins the presidency, invoking the names of people who are glorious idols to these Republicans.
Whether they should be or not.
It doesn't hurt her presidency, and she thinks, her calculation is that it can help her election and her candidacy. So the difference between her candidacy and her presidency is vast, and we've seen that with every president who's ever been elected.
Okay. It would be nice if she was more repulsed by George W. Bush and his policies, but of course she's not because she went along with most of them.
Right, and
including the Iraq War. So she can't even pin that on it. So we're left with, again, a horrible candidate and just horrible next 4 years. It's going to be horrible because it's going to be a Republican Congress. She ain't going to help anyway.
I think it's more than likely, still going to be a Republican.
I think it's more. I think there's
there's some chance, but
no, I think there's a good chance that the Democrats win the Senate and the Republicans will hold the House.
Hold the House. Yeah.
I hope so. I hope you're right.
We'll see.
Well,
yesterday, Kyle Kondik and Larry Sabato, probably not in that order, but together, released their analysis of the Senate, and they're fantastic at down ballot analysis, and they tend to be a little more conservative.
Yeah.
They're saying it's a slight, it leans Democratic, the Senate.
So let me ask you this question then. So now I just said to you, that would be good if the Senate went Democrat. And then I thought about it for a second. Well, right now we have the top of the Democratic Party pushing as hard as he can for the TPP. So if we get a Democratic Senate, maybe that's bad.
Well, I don't know.
He was just saying they're stopping it.
Well, I know they're stopping it because of the Obama presidency, and also we don't. I mean, that's John's theory.
That's my perception.
That's how he perceives it, which we don't know to be fact. But I think what it does do. First of all, if you are a president, you want the Congress because you want to not have judges held up in the Congress. So you want the majority on the Judiciary Committee right off the bat. And that is an issue that's more important to Clinton than a lot of the other issues. So right off the bat, that's an important thing. You can start getting legislation that you want. Now listen, Democratic legislation is going to be a lot different than Republican. These are not two of the exact same candidates. Republican legislation under Donald Trump and Democratic legislation under Hillary Clinton are going to be quite different from one another. And we'll never be able to prove that. But
I know we never will. Of course, we disagree on that.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, we can look at the years that Obama had Democratic control of the Senate and the House, And look, some of those policies like Obamacare are not perfect, but the big stuff that he got done during those years.
Yes, he did get
the few progressive priorities that he was able to,
Yeah,
outside of executive action, be able to get forward. It was during those years.
So true. And Democratic presidents in modern times have gotten less out of Democratic Congresses than Republican presidents out of Republican Congresses. So there is that too as well. And that maybe that can change. I don't know what would change, and I don't know why it doesn't change.
I think that's. Don't you think that's because the Republican Party? I mean, the Democrats have swung a little farther to the right, so it helps. Like, for instance, all the Democrats that went along with the Iraq War and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So, and his tax cuts and the deregulation and stuff. A lot of Democrats were on board for that. It's because the Democratic Party has shifted, and that's why the Republican president gets more out of it.
I think absolutely, but I also think that there's been a rightward slant to the Republicans, and a lot of the Republicans are saying that that's not working. This is 2 cycles, and I'm assuming that Donald Trump doesn't win. That's not working. And I think they're going to distance themselves in some cases from some of that very rightward leaning, especially if they lose by the margins that I suspect that they will.
I'll say one last thing, and then we'll start. I think that just like the Republican Party needs to extricate itself from their talking heads on cable and radio, right? Or the right-wing media bubble. They need to kind of, because that's what a lot of people are pointing
and
to.
let's rope the internet into that too now.
But
They've got some crazies on the right
internet. Rope Ted Cruz and Mike Lee into that. I mean, let's people who are actually not talking heads, but are talking people on the floor of the Senate. I mean,
that's
there's
true.
that.